Book 55 of 2019 was The Intelligence Trap by David Robson. I enjoyed reading this book. It is very kind of well researched. There's a lot of like studies that have been done, a lot of kind of knowledge to do with the psychology that's in there that is correct. So Robson's obviously done his research when constructing the books. That was really nice. Robson's kind of positing that people who have high levels of intelligence are not necessarily the best at making decisions. You know, we kind of equate intelligence with really kind of good at everything, but actual fact, people who are intelligent tend to make more errors in their logic, make more cognitive biases, and have things that are called like motivated reasoning, which I'll probably get to in a minute. It kind of starts off nicely talking about the termites, which are like a group of children that were studied in terms of their IQ. They had, you know, IQ scores of 180, 190, you know, the average is 100. They were very, very intelligent for their age. And they were kind of monitored as they got older, and IQ scores were not a prediction of success when they got older. And there's kind of a question by Robson of if intelligence scores are inflating with time as they are. People are scoring higher on intelligence tests now than they've ever done in, you know, history. Why is that? Are we actually becoming more intelligent as a society? Because if you look at our society, we haven't really improved very much. So are we really intelligent? Probably not. And what Robson is suggesting is that we're actually learning the skills that are required on an IQ test to get a good score. So, for example, you know, abstract non-verbal reasoning, we're more exposed to that, we're more used to that, so we can do that a lot better than what we used to. Just in the same way as our navigational skills are worse now because we rely on technology to, you know, Google Map it everywhere. I know I'm a one for that. Couldn't find the right words then. But essentially, Robson is kind of arguing that it's not a good predictor of success, and that other things are probably better. He's talked a little bit towards the end about Sternberg's triarchic theory, which is where you have analytical, which is, you know, what IQ tests are kind of measuring, but then you have practical, and you also have creativity. Creativity has been found to be a factor which influences how successful you are as you get older, along with things like conscientiousness. So those combined with analytical, you know, IQ skills will probably be a more predictive factor of you becoming successful than just simply your intelligence level. So then Robson kind of, you know, discusses how people who have been very, very intelligent, Nobel Prize scientists, you know, Arthur Conan Doyle created Sherlock Holmes, made some stinking errors. Like Arthur Conan Doyle believed in the two little girls who conned everyone into thinking that fairies existed by cutting paper, cardboard cutouts of them and putting them in the bushes. He believed it, and he also believed that his wife could contact the dead, and you know, fell out with Houdini because his wife reckoned that she could communicate with Houdini's mother, and actually she couldn't because I think his mother was Hungarian and it was her birthday when they contacted her, and none of these things were kind of said to Conan Doyle's wife. So he was very gullible and kind of accepted things that were said to him, but not in the way that you might think. So because of his intelligence level, he was kind of using what's called motivated reasoning. So he was thinking of like almost kind of like physics related reasoning as to why these fairies existed. He was using lots of knowledge and intelligence to justify his reasons for why he believed that they exist. And I think, you know, like a lot of people do that for ghosts and for aliens and for, you know, things like astrology and stuff. A lot of the time people who are intelligent seem to come up with some reason as to why it is what it is, when in reality it's probably not. So that was quite an interesting discussion. Robson kind of, you know, throughout the book is providing examples of where people have made really stupid errors. So for example, they talked about the situation of Brandon Mayfield. Brandon Mayflower is the lead singer of the Killers. Brandon, is that his name? No, that's Brandon Flowers. Like, Brandon Mayfield. That's my brain, like, fitting things together that don't fit and then thinking that they sound right and they don't. Anyway, so they thought that his fingerprint was on like a bomb, or materials made to use a bomb, and the bomb's not the right word for it, but you know, for what's that? It's a name for it, like say non-exploding device, but it is an exploding device. I don't know. Anyway, you can tell I've not rehearsed this. So they matched it, but fingerprint analysis is really kind of fraught with problems, because whilst no two people have the same fingerprint, even twins, because it's caused by pressure in the womb, amniotic fluid, and pressure makes the kind of ridges. Because of that, there's differences on people's fingers, but they could have a partial print, and that partial print matches a partial bit of yours, like how much of it is supposedly matching. And fingerprint analysis, particularly in the UK, is done by eye, it's not done by computer, because a computer would likely make more errors, and throw up matches to things that like wouldn't be matches when you look at them in context. And it was only because they found somebody who actually did do it, who had a fingerprint match as well, that meant that this Brandon Mayfield could get released. Before that, he was the prime suspect, and that's frightening, isn't it, to think that could happen. But because the experts were, they believed that they were very good at what they were doing, they didn't. Robson kind of discusses the way that we think once we become expert at things is from a top down. So we kind of like come with our assumptions and don't break things down systematically, because our brains, we have kind of heuristics, which is basically shortcuts into the way that we think and process information to save us the energy of processing information. We couldn't get through life processing absolutely everything, so we have like what we call heuristics, which are rule of thumbs, to process information by, which make it quicker and you then are more efficient. So once you get to an expert status, you're more likely to use those rule of thumbs, but they're not always right. They're flawed ways of thinking, and so that's one example of cognitive bias that Robson discusses, amongst many others as well. He talks about the heuristics that I was just trying to think, this has been outlined by a study, and I was just trying to remember the name of it. I think it's Griffiths et al, something like that, but it's to do with like gambling. So Robson talks about roulette wheels and how people have kind of like a bias towards thinking that it's like attribution bias, and no, it's not attribution bias, what's it called? It's basically where, say for example, you've got a roulette wheel that has had black like 5 times, you think that red is going to happen next. Well, there's a 50-50 chance each time the roulette wheel is spun. There's no kind of like correlation between them. Similar with heads and tails, if you get 10 heads, the next one is there's no greater chance of it being a heads or a tails. It's still 50-50 chance. I've just remembered the name of one, but it's not the right one. Availability bias is one of them, which is where you always remember all the people that have won the lottery, but you don't remember all the ones that have not won the lottery. And actually, it's significantly less that people win the lottery than don't win the lottery. There's things like, I think there's a hospital lottery out now, and the odds of winning that are far greater than the normal lottery, but because the prize is not as great, people will put it on the hospital lottery. But actually, you've got more chance of winning on that hospital lottery because the numbers that it could be, there's less chance. There's more chance of you getting the number. There's less possibilities that it could be. That's what I was trying to get at. So he kind of like discusses a few of those cognitive biases that we have, and he talks about things like fake news and how when you are trying to challenge fake news, it's better to not like frame it in the negative, but to frame it in the positive. So for example, if there was a myth, for example, that let's be controversial, that vaccines cause autism, if you wanted to challenge that, you wouldn't say vaccines don't cause autism. What you would do is you'd frame it in a positive way and say vaccines are perfectly safe, and then people would be more likely to believe that positively worded statement than the negative one, because what our brains do when we see a negatively worded thing is we ignore the negative bit, the not bit, and we just focus on the bit that's there. So for example, do not touch hot surface. We want to touch the hot surface, like the not bit's not processed by our brains. And that's the same like when you tell yourself like things like don't forget this, well you're going to forget it. Whereas if you said to yourself remember this, you'd be more likely to remember it. Don't fall over or watch your step, it's a bit more positively worded than that. So there's a discussion of that. There's a little bit of conversation about when people have climbed Everest, and they've done kind of analyses of why people have died on Everest, and it's always kind of a breakdown of communication between the leader and the rest of the group, and that essentially, so I was just remembering like thinking like I think this book goes on to talk about teamwork, but I don't know if I was getting that mixed up with another book, because I haven't wrote it on my list. But what I was going to say about the Everest thing was there's dominance hierarchies in particular, so different cultures have different responses to authority. So for example, people in kind of like Japanese culture, for example, are very respectful of authority and are less likely to challenge something. So there's kind of a communication of that as well, how people, although they can be intelligent, they won't make good decisions because of things like that. So those cultural differences kind of spoken about. It was almost kind of saying that you can have like a rationality quotient as well as an intelligent quotient, and that they're not kind of correlated, and that people in Western cultures are less likely to be rational than those in other cultures. There was some discussion of how the way that Japanese language is, there's not much reference to me, to I. It's Japanese culture is more holistic and views a person as part of a whole, and that's demonstrated in the way that they converse in language. And so that makes them more rational and more objective in terms of their distancing from what they're talking about. And so therefore they are more likely to make intelligent decisions. So the book as a whole, there's a lot more in there, like I'm probably not doing it justice by talking about it, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taster of it. It's a really, really good book, really interesting, very well researched, as I mentioned before. It's not like he's just spouting stuff and it's not backed up by things. There's kind of a lot of discussion of studies that have been done, research that's been done, and what they found in relation to that. So it's definitely worth a read, and I'll listen to it on audio, and the audio is really good as well. So yeah, check that out.